There are women who turn heads, and there are women who turn tides. Sharon Williams was both. The only child of the late Mr. Jonathan Williams, founder of Willex Logistics, Sharon was born into a world of power, prestige, and protection. She had never known the weight of hunger, nor the ache of scarcity. Yet somehow, her soul remained tender. Life had polished her, not hardened her. From the marbled floors of her father's mansion in Ikeja GRA to the finely pressed uniforms of the private schools she attended, Sharon had lived a life structured by elegance. But beneath the silk and structure was a steel resolve that startled even seasoned men in her father's boardroom. By the time she turned 32, Sharon had fully inherited her father's business after his passing, stepping into her role as CEO of Willex Logistics, one of Nigeria's most successful transport empires. Her face adorned magazine covers, her name stirred admiration, but her heart guarded. Very, very guarded. She wasn't cold, just cautious. In a society where a woman's worth was often measured by her last name and later by her husband's, Sharon stood defiant, not by protest, but by quiet, unwavering standards. It wasn't that men didn't try. They did, in droves. From London returned finance bros to local real estate kings, suitors came armed with roses and Rolexes. But Sharon was unmoved. She had watched too many smart women fall into foolish marriages because of pressure. She had listened to her friends cry over deceptive husbands and failed promises. "I'd rather grow old alone than marry wrong," she often said. Society labeled her too picky. Some whispered that maybe she was broken. But Sharon didn't care. She wasn't waiting for perfect, just for real. And real, she hadn't seen yet. The only person who never pressured her was Lola Martins, her childhood best friend. Lola had come into Sharon's life long before the mansion, the magazines, or the media. Their story began in the most unexpected of places, the boys' quarters behind the Williams estate. Lola's parents were the compound caretakers. Her mother swept, her father fixed leaks and pipes, and Lola, in her oversized slippers and hand-me-down gowns, followed Sharon everywhere like a shadow with questions. "What does this button do? Why do you eat that with fork and knife? Can I touch your doll?" They were just kids then. Status meant nothing. Sharon didn't see a caretaker's daughter. She saw a friend, a playmate, a sister. Every morning before school, Sharon would sneak out breakfast rolls to share with Lola. Every Christmas, she'd demand her parents buy Lola a new dress. And one day, at just 13, Sharon did something that would change Lola's life forever. Her father had just returned from a board meeting when she walked into his study, face serious. "Daddy," she said, "Lola needs to go to school." Mr. Williams looked up from his files. "She goes to school already." "No," Sharon insisted. "She needs to go to our school. She's smart, Daddy, but they can't afford it." Mr. Williams studied his daughter. She had that stubborn gleam in her eye, the same one her late mother used to have. "Please," she added, softening her tone. And so it was done. From that year, Lola became part of the Williams family in all but blood. She got uniforms with her name embroidered on them, books, tutors, exam prep, summer lessons, everything. Sharon and Lola became inseparable. Two girls from different worlds sharing the same path. At school, some girls mocked Lola's humble background. Sharon shut them up with icy glares and sharp words. She was protective, fiercely so. Years passed. They graduated university together. Sharon pursued business management while Lola chose economics. Sharon joined her father's company. Lola interned at a bank, then returned to work as a strategy advisor for Willex. To the world, they were the perfect friendship, a blend of loyalty, gratitude, and girlhood dreams. But even perfect pictures can have cracks you don't see. After Mr. Williams passed away from a sudden cardiac arrest, the company board was in chaos. There were whispers about splitting his empire, of bringing in an external CEO. But Sharon stepped in, cool and calm. At the memorial service, she didn't shed many tears. Not because she wasn't grieving, but because she didn't trust emotions in public. Behind closed doors, she mourned like a daughter who had lost her only anchor. In public, she showed them all that Willex would not fall. Her first move? Restructuring leadership. Her second? Expanding nationwide delivery routes and upgrading the company's entire software infrastructure. In under 2 years, the company grew by 35%, silencing every doubter. Sharon was crowned Businesswoman of the Year by 2 different magazines. CEOs began requesting partnerships. She was invited to panels, TEDx talks, and closed-door retreats. But through it all, she never lost touch with Lola. She still invited her for lunch on Sundays, still bought her thoughtful gifts, still reminded her often how proud she was of her journey. Lola had become polished too, always in smart suits, carrying herself with poise. But Sharon never noticed the quiet tension in her friend's eyes. The way she stared a little too long at Sharon's diamond earrings. The way she smiled when people called Sharon boss lady. Behind every, "I'm so happy for you," was a silent question. Why not me? Still, Sharon trusted her completely. Lola was family, and family doesn't envy family, right? At 32, Sharon stood in front of her bedroom mirror one morning, brushing her long hair into a bun. She paused, looked at her reflection, and sighed. "God, I'm not asking for much," she whispered. "Just someone who sees me, not the money, not the name, not the power, just me." She turned off the lights and walked out. That day, she had a business meeting scheduled with an up-and-coming tech company looking to partner with Willex. As she walked into the conference room, heels clicking, suit crisp, eyes steady, she didn't know her life was about to shift. The man who stood to greet her was tall, confident, and dressed in a navy blue suit. He had a dimpled smile, a quiet voice, and the kind of composure that didn't beg for attention. It just had it. "Good morning, Miss Williams," he said. "I'm David." He extended a hand. She shook it, and for the first time in years, her heartbeat stuttered. It started with a handshake. David had walked into that meeting with nothing flashy, no designer cologne, no oversized ego, just a navy blue suit, a calm smile, and an energy that felt steady, safe. To Sharon, that was rare. Their meeting that afternoon was supposed to last 30 minutes. It lasted 2 hours. They talked logistics, then books, then politics, then somehow landed on faith and family. David was easy to talk to, thoughtful, slow to speak, and never once tried to impress her with loud gestures. He wasn't intimidated by her status. He wasn't starstruck. He was curious, grounded. Sharon left that day confused, not because she didn't enjoy his company, but because for the first time in years, she didn't feel like she had to wear armor. A few weeks later, David asked her to coffee, professionally, of course. Sharon said yes, cautiously. The next invitation came from her. Lunch at a quiet restaurant in Victoria Island, then dinner, then a museum exhibition. And before either of them said it out loud, they were already a thing. David wasn't like the others. He never once asked about her wealth, never brought up her father's name. He spoke to her like a woman, not a brand. "I don't care about what you have," he once told her while they walked the Lekki shoreline. "I care about who you are when no one's watching." And Sharon believed him. She let her guard down, slowly, carefully, piece by piece. Lola was the first person she told. The moment Sharon mentioned David's name, Lola's eyes lit up. "Finally," she squealed. "The Queen of Ice is melting." Sharon laughed. "Don't make it weird." "I'm not. I'm proud. You deserve someone, Sharon. You've carried so much alone." In fact, Lola was more excited than Sharon had expected. She asked for details, lots of them. She wanted to know what he liked, where they went, how he looked at her. It felt sisterly, if not a bit too enthusiastic. But Sharon brushed it off. Lola had always been expressive. When Sharon invited David to a small dinner at her home, Lola was there. She watched them carefully, observing their chemistry, teasing them both. David was charming, of course. He complimented Lola's outfit, thanked her for supporting Sharon through the years, and called her the real MVP. Lola blushed. Sharon smiled. Everything looked perfect. After 8 months of dating, David proposed. He didn't do it in public or with cameras. Just the two of them, under soft candlelight, in Sharon's backyard, near the garden her father had planted years ago. He went on one knee and said, "You are the only home I've ever found." Sharon cried, then said yes. The wedding was everything Sharon never imagined she'd have. Simple, tasteful, intimate. She wore an ivory gown, not too loud. Lola stood by her side in coral satin, proudly wearing the title Chief Bridesmaid. There were only 80 guests, family, business partners, and old friends. David's people came from Osun and Lagos. Everyone said they looked like destiny carved from gold. Sharon had never felt so seen, so chosen. Lola was all smiles that day. She coordinated the makeup artist, helped the decorator with final touches, and kept whispering, "You deserve this, bestie." Even Sharon's staff could feel it. "A new season, Ma," her cook had said. "This man came with peace." And for a while, that's what it was. Peace. Married life with David was smooth at first. He was attentive, romantic, and respectful of her space. They shared morning devotion, had lazy Sunday mornings, and laughed over card games at night. But around the 8th month, something began to change. Sharon didn't notice it at first. The shifts were subtle, like someone quietly moving furniture in a familiar room. It started with the calls. David's phone would ring late at night, and he'd always excuse himself to pick it. Sometimes he'd go outside, sometimes into the guest room. The calls were always brief, but they left him either tense or distracted. At first, Sharon didn't pry. She assumed it was work. He'd just launched a new branch of his company. But then it became consistent. Every evening. Around the same time, a call from an unknown number. Sharon raised it gently once. "Who keeps calling you so late?" David smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just a supplier. Some partners don't respect boundaries." She nodded. But the next night, the same call came. And again, he left the room to answer it. Something about the way he gripped his phone, the way he looked over his shoulder, the way he returned to bed with his thoughts far from her body. Sharon's instincts stirred. She was the daughter of a businessman. She had grown up reading faces, feeling shifts in energy, and while she had always wanted to trust, she also knew when something didn't add up. Then one morning, Sharon reached for David's phone on the kitchen counter, just to check the time. The screen lit up. Private number. Calling. It was 6:42 a.m. David snatched it before she could blink. "Babe," he said, voice slightly raised, "you shouldn't be touching my phone like that." Sharon froze. "I wasn't going through it. I just needed the time." He exhaled. "Sorry, I'm just under pressure. That number has been harassing me." She said nothing, just nodded. But in that moment, a seed of doubt was planted. And doubt, when watered by silence, grows fast. Sharon began to observe. She noted the pattern. The calls always came when they were alone, never when staff or visitors were around. David's tone during those calls, whispers, sharp responses, short bursts of anger. He never said who it was, and she never asked again. Instead, she started watching, listening, quietly gathering pieces, unsure what they meant, but certain they meant something. Love hadn't made her blind, but now she had no choice but to see. The rain had barely stopped that morning. The streets still glistened, and the skies remained a stubborn gray when Sharon stepped out in her usual grace, clutching her work tablet. Her driver, Samuel, a quiet, dependable man in his mid-40s, held the car door open as always, shielding her with an umbrella. "Madam, roads are slippery today. We should go slow," he said as she settled into the back seat. She smiled. "Always, Samuel. Safety first." As they drove off, Sharon had no idea this would be the last time she'd see Samuel alive. The crash happened at the express turnoff near Ohodu Bridge. A trailer's brakes failed, so they said. The SUV spun 3 times before slamming against the barrier. Glass exploded like firecrackers, metal folded like paper. And then, darkness. When Sharon opened her eyes days later in the hospital, she couldn't feel her legs. Doctors used words like spinal trauma, lower body paralysis, wheelchair-bound. Her mind couldn't keep up. The only thing she felt was the stabbing grief when she learned that Samuel hadn't survived. He died shielding her with his body, slumped against the steering wheel. David, her husband of just over a year, stayed by her side like a dutiful spouse. He spoon-fed her, wiped her tears, and whispered prayers at night. His devotion seemed touching, too perfect. Too mechanical. But grief has a way of sharpening one's senses. In the eerie silence of her new life, Sharon began noticing things. David stopped praying out loud once the nurses were gone. He answered late-night phone calls in the bathroom, speaking in hushed tones, then returning to bed smelling faintly of alcohol and perfume. He began traveling more, business trips he never used to take. His touch grew colder, his voice harsher. One night, she pretended to be asleep when his phone rang. The screen lit up with a name she hadn't seen in recent time. Lola A. Her heart hammered. She didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, she waited, watched, and listened. One afternoon, while David was away, Sharon asked her cousin Bolu to visit and stay over. Bolu, a tech-savvy accountant, offered to check David's call records. What they found chilled Sharon to her core. David had been in constant contact with Lola, her best friend since childhood, every day for the past year. The calls intensified just before the accident, and then again, recently. Lola? Bolu frowned, reading through the list. As in, your Lola? Sharon swallowed hard. Yes, but why would she? I don't know yet, Sharon said, her voice trembling. But I need to find out. She requested Bolu's silence and continued her charade with David, acting weak, grateful, oblivious. Weeks passed. Then one evening, her new driver resumed work, a young man named Michael. He had been recommended by her lawyer's firm, polite, calm, with kind eyes. Sharon initially distrusted everyone, but Michael's quiet patience, the way he waited for her to finish crying before wheeling her inside, slowly built a bridge of confidence. One morning, Sharon asked Michael to take her for a private ride, not to the hospital, but to an old property her father had once owned in Acadia. It was abandoned, dusty, forgotten, but safe. Inside the car, she spoke for the first time about her suspicions. Michael, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, do you believe in instincts? He nodded in the rearview mirror. I do, Ma. My instincts tell me I'm surrounded by snakes. Michael parked the car and turned to face her. What do you mean? And so, she told him. About the phone calls, about Lola, about the change in David, about the late-night conversations, the coldness, the accident, everything. Michael didn't interrupt. He simply listened. When she finished, she asked quietly, Am I going crazy? No, Ma, he said. You're waking up. That simple sentence marked the beginning of a secret alliance. Michael became more than a driver. He became her ears, her eyes, her silent guardian. He watched who entered the house. He installed hidden cameras. He documented every suspicious movement David made, like when he met Lola secretly at a hotel in Lekki, or when they exchanged a brown envelope in the parking lot of a supermarket. The evidence piled up like rot under a rug. Michael also accessed Sharon's estate lawyer to verify something she had long suspected. David had begun pushing for power of attorney. She never signed the documents. Her paralysis was temporary, not incapacitating. Yet the pressure increased. David began guilt-tripping her, gaslighting her. I'm your husband, Sharon. Don't you trust me? I do, David, she'd say, with a weak smile. I'm just not ready. Meanwhile, Michael helped her prepare. They moved all her original documents, land deeds, will, shares, business ownership papers, to a secure location. She left only copies in her home study, precisely where David could find them. Then, she began playing the role of the fading, dependent wife. She grew quieter, colder, as though giving up, and David took the bait. One evening, Sharon overheard a conversation between David and someone on the phone. He was outside the patio, pacing back and forth. Sharon had wheeled quietly toward the hallway. We need to finish this soon, he said. She's dragging it. I can't get the documents without a fight. A pause. No, we can't do another car crash. Too obvious. Maybe poison or something slower. Sharon's breath caught in her throat. It was real, all of it. She rolled herself back quietly, heart racing. Later that night, when Michael came to wheel her upstairs, she looked up at him and said, It's time. He nodded, but neither of them knew how soon things would spiral. The air in Sharon's room was heavy with silence. The kind of silence that came with the weight of a secret too dangerous to speak aloud. Her legs, lifeless beneath the silk sheets, were a daily reminder of betrayal, of how far the people closest to her would go to destroy her. But her eyes, Her eyes had changed. They no longer glistened with hurt or helplessness. They now held fire. Michael stood by the window, arms folded, watching the long driveway where David's sleek black SUV had just pulled in. "He's back," Michael said flatly. "With her." Sharon didn't flinch. "Let them enjoy their fantasy. It won't last much longer." Michael looked at her. "You're sure about this?" "As sure as I am that if I stay here one more month, I'll leave in a body bag." It had taken weeks, quiet conversations at night, stolen documents, Michael's street contacts, and a forged medical report from an inside source. David believed Sharon's health was deteriorating faster than expected. He'd grown colder, barely touching her, making more frequent trips, allegedly for business, but Sharon knew better. One evening, Sharon lay still, feigning sleep, when her bedroom door creaked open, soft footsteps. Her body stiffened. The presence stood by her bedside, silent. Then a whisper, a female's voice. "I'll finally be free of you soon." The door clicked shut. That was the last straw. The escape plan was launched the very next day. Michael arranged everything with stunning precision. The route, the car, the fireproof dummies, the rogue coroner who owed a favor. Sharon transferred all her original property documents to Michael's private vault. She left only photocopies and forged legal papers inside the home safe, ones she knew David would break into eventually. "We need a location with no return," Michael said one evening. "Somewhere that says you're dead beyond recovery." "There's a cliff 2 hours away," Sharon replied. "My father once took me there. It's deadly." They scouted it together, Michael pushing her wheelchair close enough to see the jagged rocks and roaring waters below. The fall was unforgiving. If a car went down, survival was not expected. Perfect. 3 nights later, the plan was set in motion. Sharon dressed plainly. Her hair was hidden under a scarf. Michael wheeled her into the back seat of a silver sedan he'd rented under a fake name. A mannequin dressed in her hospital gown lay beside her in the front passenger seat. The mannequin wore a medical bracelet with Sharon's name. The driver's seat? Occupied by another mannequin. It was grisly, but necessary. Michael drove fast but steady. They reached the cliff around 3 a.m. Rain had just begun to fall, washing away their tire marks. "Final check," Michael whispered. Sharon opened the briefcase on her lap. Inside, her real birth certificate, estate documents, photos, and her father's last handwritten letter, proof of everything that tied her to her true identity. "God forgive me," she muttered, then closed the case. Michael positioned the car near the cliff. He poured gasoline over the dummies and set a slow-burning fuse. Then he carried Sharon out of the car, wrapped in a black blanket, and wheeled her into the woods. Seconds later, the car revved, accelerated forward, and plunged off the edge. A distant explosion cracked the night. The flames rose high. The fire did the rest. By dawn, the fire service had arrived. So had the police. The coroner Michael had bribed showed up, examined the wreckage, and declared, "No chance of survival. The fire burned too hot. We can't retrieve any remains." But this bracelet was found. Sharon Williams. David received the call mid-morning. At first, he was silent. Then he broke into violent sobs. "Oh my God, Sharon, my wife, no!" Lola rushed in, pretending to be distraught. But behind the hand that covered her mouth was a smirk she could barely suppress. David played the grieving husband well. He wept at the press conference. He organized a memorial with elaborate flower arrangements and solemn music. The world mourned Sharon Williams. But the truth? David and Lola had champagne that night. Over the next few weeks, David wasted no time. He found Sharon's will, conveniently altered, and assumed full control of her properties. The estate lawyer, who had not been in Sharon's inner circle, had no reason to question the legitimacy of the documents. Soon, David moved into the mansion fully. Lola joined him days later. "You've done it, babe," she whispered in his ear one night. "She's gone. Forever." David chuckled. "And soon, you'll be Mrs." Back in a quiet coastal town miles away, Sharon was very much alive. Michael had found a secure bungalow for her, complete with cameras, alarms, and a medical assistant who asked no questions. She'd cut her hair, dyed it black. Her voice was now lower, practiced, her body weaker, but her mind sharper than ever. They watched the news together. David on magazine covers, Lola in expensive gowns, flaunting Sharon's life. Every time Sharon saw Lola laugh on TV, something burned in her chest. She has no idea what's coming, she said, gripping the wheels of her chair. 3 months later, invitations went out. David Savage and Lola Adebayo invite you to their wedding. The venue, Rosebridge Gardens. The date, October 17th. It was the final insult. They weren't even discreet. Michael stood behind Sharon as she read the invitation. She didn't blink. "Get me the best tailor in this town," she said slowly. "I'm attending this wedding." Michael raised a brow. As a guest? No, as the ghost of the bride they murdered. The week before the wedding, Sharon wrote letters, 4 of them. One to the national press, one to her lawyer, one to her godfather, a retired judge, and one to David. Each contained exact dates, details, documents, and proof that she had faked her death and why. She didn't post any of them yet, just in case. Instead, she rehearsed every step with Michael. How she'd enter, how her hood would be drawn, how Michael would wheel her to the altar right before the vow. "Right at I do," she told him. "No earlier. I want the knife to twist." Michael nodded. "And if they try to run? We'll have security. Discreet, armed if necessary." Sharon exhaled. "Good. No one's running this time." The night before the wedding, rain poured heavily. Sharon sat by the window in her hideout, the lights off. Michael entered with her tea. "You ready for tomorrow?" She turned. "I've never been more ready for anything in my life." He placed the tea on the table. "You've come a long way, Sharon." Her eyes softened. "We've come a long way, Michael. I'd be dead if not for you." He shrugged. "You gave me a purpose. Protecting you is the least I can do." They sat in silence, watching the storm rage outside. Elsewhere, David stood in front of the mirror in a white tuxedo, smiling to himself. "Tomorrow," he said, "it's all complete." Lola adjusted her veil nearby. "Yeesh to us, baby, to our new life." They clinked champagne glasses. David laughed. The dead don't talk, but neither of them noticed the envelope that had arrived at the wedding venue, unopened. Inside a simple note, "Stop the wedding. The dead are watching." The air was thick with anticipation. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting golden light across the grand hall of the Roseland Garden Event Center. The floral arrangements were elaborate. White roses with hints of crimson lilies lined the aisle, giving the illusion of purity, of love, of deception hidden beneath beauty. Guests filled the room, elegantly dressed, eyes beaming with expectation, murmurs floating in the air like warm mist. David stood at the altar, dressed in a tailored navy blue tuxedo, grinning handsomely for the cameras. He looked every inch the perfect groom. But beneath that smile, a darkness smoldered, the kind of smile that hides 1,000 sins. Lola, in an ivory satin gown that flowed like melted moonlight, clutched a bouquet of orchids and baby's breath. Her makeup was flawless, her steps confident, but her heart beat fast. Something felt off. Yet she dismissed the unease. This was her moment. After months of scheming, grieving in public while celebrating in private, the payoff was finally here. She was about to marry the man she had stolen. Together, they had buried Sharon and everything in their way. Or so they thought. The priest opened his Bible. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." A subtle hush swept the hall as phones were silenced and eyes locked onto the couple. David looked at Lola and whispered, "We made it." Lola smiled back. They both had no idea. This would be the longest day of their lives. Outside, just beyond the double doors of the hall, Michael stood beside a wheelchair. Seated in it was a figure cloaked in black, hoodie pulled low, face hidden. Michael checked his watch. 3:47 p.m. the exact time Sharon had planned for her moment. "You ready?" he whispered, his voice laced with a mix of tension and duty. The woman in the wheelchair nodded slowly, and Michael pushed the doors open. The grand hall doors creaked as the staff turned instinctively, startled by the interruption. Gasps echoed across the room as all heads turned. A hooded man pushed in a wheelchair, rolling silently down the aisle. The priest paused. "Can we help you?" David's brows furrowed. Lola's eyes darted. "Security?" someone whispered. Michael ignored them, moving forward with purpose. Then it happened. A firm, clear voice broke the silence. "Stop this wedding!" The hall went still. David froze. His eyes widened. Lola blinked, stunned. The voice sounded hauntingly familiar, like an echo from a grave. The woman in the wheelchair slowly raised her head. Every breath in the room caught. Trembling fingers reached up and pulled back the hood. Gasps exploded. It was Sharon, alive, scarred, but very much alive. A storm of emotions raced through the room. Phones dropped. A woman screamed. The wedding planner fainted on the spot. Lola's bouquet fell from her hands as her mouth quivered, words refusing to form. David staggered backward, his lips trembling. "No, no, this can't be. You're dead. I buried you." Sharon's eyes were cold, focused, her voice unwavering. "You buried a lie." She rolled forward. "And now I've come back, not just for truth, but for justice." The tension became unbearable. Lola tried to run. Her heels skidded on the marble floor as she turned, but two security guards blocked her path. David stood still, caught between fear and disbelief, every plan he'd made unraveling before him. Sharon continued, "I survived the fire you lit, the crash you designed, the betrayal you orchestrated with her." She pointed at Lola. "Your lover, my friend, my chief bridesmaid." Whispers filled the room. She was in on it? They tried to kill her? Is this real? Tears filled the eyes of some guests who had known Sharon before the accident. The strong, loving woman who had once danced across these very floors in a gown, smiling without suspicion. Sharon's voice was louder now, controlled yet trembling with emotion. "You planned my death. You caused Samuel's murder. You moved into my home, wore my clothes, and celebrated your wicked victory." She turned toward the crowd. 8 months of suffering, of pretending, of hiding while healing. But I didn't die. God gave me breath to return and expose you both for who you truly are. David snapped. "This is insane! This is some setup! She's faking this! Sharon, this is crazy!" But Michael stepped forward. "Enough, David." The wedding hall remained frozen in time, as if the clock had stopped ticking. David's mouth hung open. Lola clutched the hem of her dress, trembling as if struck by lightning. Some guests had risen from their seats in disbelief, murmuring and gasping. Others instinctively pulled out their phones, capturing the surreal scene that unfolded before them. Sharon's voice, calm yet thunderous, echoed in the tense silence. "You planned to bury me, but I rose." Michael stood firmly behind her wheelchair, arms crossed, gaze fixed on David. Sharon reached into the inner pocket of her coat and retrieved a small device. "Before we go any further," she said, holding up the recorder, "let's hear what the happy couple had planned." With a press of a button, David's voice crackled through the speakers. "We'll make it look like an accident, Lola. Her brakes will fail again, just like last time. This time, no survivors. She dies, I inherit." Then Lola's giggle followed. "And we can finally be free. You'll marry me, and everything she owns will become ours." The crowd erupted. Cries of "Jesus" and "Oh my God" filled the air. Cameras rolled. Reporters whispered into their microphones. The air was electric, heavy with outrage, betrayal, and shock. From the side entrance, Uniformed officers marched in. Sharon turned slightly. "I believe you're here for them," she said, her voice still calm, but with an edge of triumph. The lead officer stepped forward. "David Savage, Lola Martins, you are under arrest for the attempted murder of Sharon Williams and the murder of Samuel Mose. You have the right to remain silent." As the officer continued, David lunged forward, desperation in his eyes. "Wait! No, this is a setup! She's lying!" Lola fell to her knees, mascara running, shrieking. "David, you said she was dead! You told me she was dead!" "Get off me, woman!" David barked. Their downfall was not just legal, it was public, humiliating, poetic. The very crowd they had invited to witness their union now watched their disgrace unfold in real time. The police cuffed them, read them their rights, and began leading them out. Michael leaned toward Sharon. "You did it." "No," Sharon whispered, eyes steady. "We did." 2 weeks later. The courtroom was packed. The trial had become a media sensation. Headlines read, "Billionaire wife fakes death to catch murderous husband and mistress," and "Wedding turns to criminal arrest. Justice for Sharon." Sharon sat near the front, wheeled in by Michael. Her posture was regal, dignified. Despite her paralysis, her spirit was unbroken. The prosecution played the recordings again. Phone conversations, hidden camera footage from Sharon's home, even screenshots of bank transfers David made to Lola just days before the first accident. Then came the CCTV clip from a private investigator's drone, showing David's secret meetings with a known brake tampering technician weeks before Sharon's crash. But perhaps the most damning testimony came from a former employee of David who confessed to being offered money to finish the job after the first attempt failed. David's lawyer tried to argue insanity, Lola's claimed manipulation. But the evidence was undeniable. When the judge delivered the final verdict, the courtroom was pin-drop silent. For the attempted murder of Mrs. Sharon and the premeditated murder of Mr. Samuel Moses, the judge said sternly, David Savage and Miss Lola Martins are hereby sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. Lola screamed. David slumped in his seat. Sharon closed her eyes briefly, allowing the moment to wash over her. Justice. Not just for herself, but for Samuel, whose life had been senselessly taken in the wreckage of greed. Outside the courtroom, cameras flashed as Michael wheeled Sharon to a waiting van. Reporters called out to her. "Mrs. Sharon, how did you survive the accident? What gave you the courage to come back and face them? Is it true you left all your wealth behind when you escaped?" Sharon smiled faintly, but didn't speak. Not yet. Later that evening, a pre-recorded video aired on national television and social media, Sharon's only statement. Seated in her wheelchair, flanked by a simple white background, she looked directly into the camera. "My name is Sharon," she began. "I faked my death, not to escape life, but to expose a lie, to expose evil." She recounted the betrayals, the secrets, and the night she almost died. She honored Samuel's loyalty, and she thanked Michael, the unexpected angel who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Tears flowed across the country as people watched. Her strength touched millions. She ended with a line that would be quoted for years. Open quote, "When they tried to bury me, they forgot I was a seed." Close quote. A month later, Sharon established the Samuel Okechukwu Foundation, providing scholarships and support to the families of loyal domestic workers lost in service. Her estate, once targeted by David and Lola, was now being used to empower others. Michael remained by her side, not just as a driver, but as a confidant, a friend. When the press speculated about romance, Sharon simply smiled and said, "Some bonds are deeper than love. They're born of fire." One evening, Sharon sat in her garden. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and lavender. Michael approached with 2 mugs of tea. He handed her one, then sat beside her on the bench. "Still thinking about them?" he asked. "No," Sharon replied softly. "I'm thinking about me, about tomorrow." A breeze rustled the leaves. Birds chirped. "Do you ever wonder," she said, "what would have happened if that first accident succeeded?" Michael looked at her, his voice steady. "Then the world would have lost one of the bravest women it's ever known." Sharon smiled. "Thank you for not letting that happen." He raised his mug. "To justice." She clinked her mug against his. "And to freedom." Sharon frowning faintly. "Michael, after everything we've been through," she pauses, looks at him deeply. "Do you think heroes like you ever fall for the women they save?" Michael glances at her, face unreadable. "Hello, besties." And so, justice prevailed. In a world full of betrayal, greed, and deception, Sharon rose from the ashes, not just to survive, but to win. David and Lola's thirst for wealth led them to dig a grave, and in the end, they fell right into it. But Sharon, she found strength in her pain, and with Michael by her side, not just a driver, but a true friend, she began a new chapter, stronger, wiser, unbreakable. Sometimes, the ones who break us only prepare us for the best version of ourselves. Betrayal may shake you, but it doesn't have to break you. Rise, like Sharon did. If this story shook you, inspired you, or gave you chills, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heart-pounding tales, only here on Tales by Audrey Mobilaji. See you in the next one. Stay strong, stay wise, and never let the darkness dim your light.